In the last few weeks, as part of the 2013 Edinburgh Iranian Festival, I've held a series of workshops, I've held a series of lectures and also a book launch for King and Court in Ancient Persia. And this has been a marvellous thing for me, first of all, to meet members of the Iranian community who are here in Britain, as well as local Scots and other Brits as well. Bringing all this kind of East-West mix together physically in the same space is a wonderful thing. So I did a whole series of different events. I began with a whole day of a workshop on ancient Persia, in which we looked at some really key, fundamentally important texts. So we took those apart, disseminated them, thought about what does it all mean, and there was a really, really good discourse, good conversation, lots of questions being asked about some of these things, which some of my Iranian audience in particular thought they knew, but when they read it in translation properly, it completely blew their minds to what it really said. So that was really interesting to get very often an Iranian feedback for some of these things.
Well, what I always say about Dr. Jones is that he is a historian, that he is like a storyteller. So he says stories which at the same time that they are very academic, they are good for general audience as well. So people who don't have a strong background of the ancient Persian history, they can understand what was the relationships between the kings, what these dynasties mean to the Iranian culture, and what was the real history based on facts.
I've enjoyed mostly because I heard quite new things about the history of my country. Some parts were totally new to me. I think it is very important for lecturers to have connection to outside the university and transform their knowledge, their research to people outside. There are always people interested in these topics that they can't have access to university venues and bases.
One of the things I really aim for is just accessibility. All academics, of course, have a tendency to look inwardly all the time, and we could easily, within a discipline like ancient Persia, which is so specialised, really keep this to ourselves within our small academic community. But it's always been my mission to open up this wonderful area of study to a more general public. And what I've tried to do in things like King and Court in ancient Persia, but also in my lectures for the Iran Festival, without ever dumbing down, is just to make things accessible, to give people a sense of what the study is all about, how spontaneous and how alive it is. It's not moribund, and it's not also just for specialists, that people can partake in it.
I think these kind of events are very, very important. So I think coming across this information in a more accessible way than just reading vast amounts of literature is often very difficult for people to comprehend and gain an idea of exactly how things are, especially in the ancient world, which is quite hard to gain an idea of. So I think in the event like today, anyone can come in. You don't have to know the subject beforehand. You don't have to be a member of the Edinburgh University, and it brings lots of different people together.
I think it's great for us to be able to actually present research in a very accessible way, both to the wider public as well as other colleagues who are not necessarily in that area, and using these venues to inform and educate, I think is really, really important.
I just walked into the room and all of a sudden I was absorbed in this very interesting talk about my country's history. What can be better than that? For me, who knew lots of stuff already, it was still very interesting because he gave it his own kind of style of storytelling, which I found pretty interesting.
I learned a lot just coming to this lecture. And it's an incredibly fascinating period, and Lloyd's enthusiasm for it is exactly what we need for people to kind of prise open the way into these ancient worlds where these people were living real amazing lives.
It was really amazing when I was looking out from the podium at the audience in front of me, just to see the variety of people there, So there were older people, There were very young people. There were some of my students who were there. There were Iranians there were Scots, there were Brits, there were Europeans. I mean, it really was an international consortium, and I really liked that feeling. And everybody brought something into the mix, which was uniquely theirs. You know, for somebody who studies the idea of empire and how ancient people actually communicate and actually get on, this was a joy in itself just to see this diversity. So there needs to be more out there, and I'm determined in whatever way I can to help the public access all this wonderful knowledge we have about ancient Persia.
This production is brought to you by the University of Edinburgh.